few months ago, I was given this pair of Bose speakers. They're the first generation Model 2.2 from the late 80s, according to the manual. That's admittedly a little bit newer than the stuff that I usually show on here, but they're in really good condition. They were free, and they'll serve to answer a few more odd speaker-related questions for those who, like me, are still in the learning process. So stick around. We're going to check them out. Now, before I go too deep into these, I do want to acknowledge that Bose products can be a little bit polarizing when it comes to how people feel about them. I have no intention of placing myself into either camp because that's not the point of this video. All I want to do really is show you these free speakers that I got and give you just a little bit of info about them. I leave it up to you to decide how you feel about them. The first thing that probably stands out about them is their shape. Unlike most conventional speakers, these sit horizontally with the angled cloth facing inward toward the center of the room. They're actually sold as a matched pair with the labeling positioned upright for the right and left unit. I appreciate that they don't just expect you to put one of them upside down. If we pop the black speaker cloth off, you can see the two drivers, the larger 6-inch woofer and the 2-inch tweeter. In the manual, the woofer is described as a long excursion woofer, and the tweeter is referred to as being fluid cooled. So what do those terms actually mean? A long excursion woofer, while it sounds like that would be suited to a 2-week road trip across the Sahara, that actually refers to how far the cone travels in and out, or rather can travel in and out from its resting position. You also find short or low excursion woofers as well. A general rule is that the longer the excursion or travel, the smaller the relative surface area of the rigid cone part because the suspension has to be able to flex to accommodate that motion. The trade-off of volume versus potential distortion is a whole video on its own, so I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole for right now. We're just looking at simple definitions. The other term was fluid-cooled tweeter. The Cliff Notes version of that is that they use ferrofluid to cool the voice coils of the speaker. In principle, it's the same stuff you see making the neat spiky patterns next to a magnet, but the fluid that they use in speakers is a more refined version that won't damage the lacquer coating of the wires. The idea is it's able to conduct heat away from the coils into the magnet much better than air can. Keep in mind, it can sometimes leak or solidify and gum up the works, rendering the sound muddy or non-existent. Fortunately, that's not the case here, but it is something to look out for when you're dealing with secondhand stuff. The Bose 2.2 doesn't have a complicated crossover circuit, just a single 3 microfarad capacitor and a 2 ohm wire wound resistor in line with the tweeter. Something interesting I noticed while looking at the service manual, they used different pairings of capacitor and resistor for these during just this one model generation. So they also used a 3.4 and a 2.7 microfarad cap paired with a 1 and a 3 ohm resistor respectively. I'd hazard a guess that they sound slightly different depending on which pairing you have, and it might possibly be why some people like these and others don't. I'd be curious to try them side by side to see if there really is a difference. There's a thin slot next to the Bose emblem that acts as a port for the cabinet. Some speaker cabinets are ported and some aren't. They're usually referred to as bass reflex ports and are literally just a hole in the box. The very simple version of their purpose is to extend the bass range by allowing air to move in and out of the otherwise sealed cabinet, but there are a lot of factors that go into whether or not they're used. Those can be anything from the type of sound you're going for to the physical limitations of the speaker cones themselves, and are again an entire field of study outside the scope of this video. If we take a look at the grill cloth, you can see that it's actually pretty clean. These were really dirty when I got them. Fortunately, they're easy to remove and wash. They're held in place with 3 studs, which, depending on when the speaker was made, are either inserted directly into holes on the fiberboard, like is the case with these, or they're attached to a grommet. In either case, they attach and detach very easily. When you go to remove them, you'll want to find the studs. Not that kind, sorry. I mean on the grill cloth. Here, here, and here. You can tell where to pull by gently pressing on the cloth and seeing where the small angled truss is. It should be on the top unless they've changed the design at some point. You'll want to pull gently from each of those points so you don't break the plastic frame. The entire grill and frame assembly is just plastic and fabric which has been thermally bonded to it, so it's completely safe to get it wet. I just filled my sink with warm soapy water and then soaked them for a few minutes before agitating them and then rinsing as thoroughly as I could. You'll have to forgive me for not cleaning my sink first, but in my defense it was 2 a.m. They came out very clean though, as you can see. They were pretty dirty in their little cameo in my last video. What was really remarkable to me was how quickly they dried. The cabinet doesn't come apart, so to get at the inside, it's easiest just to remove the woofer. Once that's out, you can see the polyester insulation material and the crossover circuitry. First of all, thank you Bose for not filling it with fiberglass. I replaced the capacitors with new ones from Dayton Audio, which was a simple matter of desoldering the old ones and attaching the new ones. I didn't notice a huge improvement, but it definitely helped things a bit. I know I've said it before, but recapping speakers is so easy and it costs hardly anything. So you might as well do it whenever you get an old pair of speakers. It helps almost every time. And sometimes the change can be dramatic for only a few bucks. Oh, also make sure you line the gaskets up properly when you reattach the speakers. So let's talk a little bit about setting them up. While it's true that the placement of any speaker in a room will affect the sound, Bose more or less engineers their speakers around the room placement and the acoustic effects that that'll produce. They suggest placing them at points 1/4 the total length of the wall from the corner. They've given a little diagram of how to set them up ideally. They recommend placing them about ear level, a minimum of 3 feet apart, and with any obstructions like books, tchotchkes, curtains, or whatever else, at least 6 inches away from the speaker grills. Additionally, they also made a point to recommend installing a 1.5 amp fuse into the speaker lines to protect the speakers if the amp fails. I didn't try doing that, but I'm curious if any of you have and whether you noticed a difference in the sound after doing so. If you have, let me know in the comments. If we look at the back, the only things we see are the wire hookups and the label. They have a specified impedance of 8 ohms, and the manual states a min-max power rating of 10 to 75 watts with a continuous rating of 60 watts. The wire is attached with just bare wire inserted into these spring-loaded terminals. Always remember to attach the positive on your amp to the positive on the speakers and negative to negative the same way. So that's the Bose 2.2 bookshelf speaker. That's pretty much all I can think of to say for now. No doubt I will think of other things later and be mad at myself. I am still looking into getting a setup to record speaker demos, which would be really cool and I'd love to get to show you, but I'm not quite dialed in there yet. Hopefully that'll be soon. I also want to thank Gary who gave me these. He's somebody that I know from doing the Palm Springs Vintage Market. Thank you, Gary. So until next time, keep thrifting and stay metal, y'all.